Hello and welcome to the wonderful story series named Reflections, series where we share stories that recharge and rejuvenate us. And today we have a wonderful speaker all the way from UK, Neville Hodgkinson. He's an author and journalist, and he has specialized for much of his career in writing about health and medicine and returned to medical journalism in the recent years. He has two sons and five grandchildren, so a lot of experience. And Neville has been a student of Raj Yoga for 40 years and now lives at the Brahma Kumaris Global Retreat Center at Oxford, UK. So, a lot of experience there and a great meditation practice. And the title of this story that Neville is going to share with us is Love's Return. It's over to you to share your story with us.
Thank you, Lotta. And yes, I feel very privileged that my journey has taken me from a very atheistic perspective, actually, to one where I feel as if that was making me increasingly dry inside, and that a connection to the spiritual realm is absolutely vital for an effective life with of relationships and activity that doesn't drain you, but instead gives you joy and shares with others too. I think to begin the story, I could begin it perhaps with remembering that I was born towards the end of the war, the big war, 1939-45 war. I was born at an army camp, quite difficult circumstances. My father was away in the war, and I think it was probably quite a tricky start. We went to live with my grandparents for a while, and that also held some strains for my mother, especially. And in my teenage years, I concluded that religion, as I was seeing it, didn't really seem to have much reality to it. I saw a lot of hypocrisy, and something in me decided that it was pretty crazy of humans to believe in things that they couldn't see and touch, ideologies, of a better world, like the Nazis had that had led to so much havoc, and then, in fact, in the Soviet Union and its high ideals, but leading to a lot of suppression and suffering, millions dying in the name of pursuing some kind of great dream of a wonderful tomorrow. So I was part of that post-war generation that was skeptical about all of that sort of stuff. And in my teen years, I think I decided that science was really the best way forward. And there was also a part of me that to try to stay in touch with the more feeling side of my nature would give myself to loving relationships, or at least what I thought were loving relationships. But looking back, I feel as if there was definitely a selfish element there. And that was because of the love being experienced in a external way, a physical way, a needy way, if you like, where I did fall very deeply in love with a woman who was to become my wife, as we met as students, and I was crazily in love, I remember. I would miss the last train back to my digs by 5 minutes, just for the sake of an extra 5 minutes. And then I would have about a 5 mile walk to get back. But I didn't mind. I was so on cloud nine at that time. But as the years went by, um, putting myself more and more into work as a journalist, um, as the relationship developed, there was a couple of children came along, and that was very nice. I used to live through them somewhat, feeling that I could make up for some bits that were missing in my own childhood by trying to give to them. But it was all kind of leading me more and more to a certain feeling of dryness within. I think really at root because of this hope that a kind of materialistic scientific approach to life would give me what was needed, when in fact it was making me more and more alienated from the inner being, if you like. And so in my mid-30s, working very hard, having quite a bit of external success. I had a good role in the newspaper world, my wife also, and we had good earnings. We were leading a life that was kind of very much ahead in material terms compared with the backgrounds that we come from. And, you know, dinner parties and wine drinking and adventures, clubbing, having good fun with the kids. But internally, the sense that somehow the battery was being run down. But and basically, I think because of losing myself in the world outside of me and losing sight of the the spirit that really is at the core of our being. And so then I came across some yogis who were teaching how to be more internalized. And over the years, I've found that even though it's been quite painful with some of the things that I've had to let go of, but the more I've let go, the more I'm able to genuinely love. After our boys had grown up, my wife, partly because of my interest in this spiritual journey, but also I think she was very independent minded, and the job of raising the children was done, and she felt that she wanted to go out on her own. And I remember asking one of the guides that I had, Liz wants us to separate. I was really quite distressed at the idea, and the person said, "Do you love Liz?" I said, "Yes." And they said, "Well, you'll want what she wants then, won't you?" And this is such a core thing. In fact, my wanting was not really wanting what was best for her, it was wanting for myself. But I understood the logic of it, so we parted amicably and stayed in touch over the years. But as the decades passed, every now and then when we would get together again, I would feel that old longing, which is in a way the opposite of love. It's a common mistake to think that when we're longing for another person, we're longing for their company, or we're longing for something, some success in our work. It's commonly thought that that's a good thing, but actually it nearly always leads to some kind of sorrow, I feel, looking back. And I think really the real joy that I've been experiencing in more recent years has been to see that as I've stoked up this battery of my well-being internally through meditation practice and spiritual study, as that has continued, I've really found that I can come from a more inside-out perspective. So the battery is charged, the car runs well. When the battery is low and you're worried about whether you're going to get to your destination, maybe the fuel tank also, getting right down on low, then it's much more stressful. Sometimes you do run right out of fuel and you have to kind of divert your life to recharge. All sorts of things come in when you don't know how to keep that battery of your well-being topped up, well charged. And this is the brilliance of the meditative path and the brilliance of spiritual understanding, that it enables you to go within, keep that battery charged, and then with the power that that gives you, have a genuinely loving relationship with the external world. And this works magic because there's a wonderful saying that when that thought is cause, like thought stroke feeling, if you like, thought or feeling is cause, experience is effect. If you're not happy with the effects in your life, you have to change the nature of your thinking. Very logical, but very, very powerful. If thought is cause, experience is effect. If you're not happy with the effects in your life, which I wasn't, you have to change the nature of your thinking. And so in my mid to late 30s, I was feeling exhausted by my work. I was worried about the relationships. I felt there wasn't enough love in the home. Lots of things like that were going on. And so when I began this change of tack, if you like, of learning how to go within, how to inspect myself, how to recharge internally. The relationship with my sons changed. The second half of their childhood, it was very different. It wasn't so exciting for them because I was no longer kind of living through them, trying to make good some of the gaps in my own childhood, but I was more genuinely caring for them as individuals. And I think they benefited hugely from this period, even though the switch that I was making in my lifestyle also produced quite a lot of humor in the home. But with Liz, my ex, as well, over the years, the feeling increasingly that she's special to me, in the sense that when I'm with her, I enjoy it. We've a long history together, but when we're not together, she's free and I'm free. Instead of having those old longings renewed when I see her, which happened for a long time in my story, but perhaps partly because of that deep dependency that falling in love had produced in me, instead of rising in love as I see what happened later. So as this change has happened, the love that I feel, it's like moves towards being unconditional, which we hear that phrase that unconditional love is a good thing, but actually achieving it is quite a challenge. But as you move towards that, it's really lovely, because what happens is that the people that you're relating to pick up that you're not asking of them anymore. So they're more ready to see you and be with you. That I think my ex didn't like this dependency. And I believe that seeing that is nearly disappeared, I think that's why she's more comfortable when we do get together. And also this, when you're holding those loving feelings internally, when they become more natural to you because you're not asking of others, you're feeling that you're sharing something from a place of strength, that sharing also brings love back, along the lines of this idea that thought is cause, experience is effect. So if your mind is increasingly filled with love rather than fear and anxiety and neediness, then life gives you love rather than fear and anxiety and neediness. It's amazing. It's a real principle. It's probably related to this thing that you hear about in New Age circles sometimes, of the law of attraction, that as your consciousness, as your awareness, so that becomes your future. And this is a wonderful thing to discover. It's not widely understood, but it's a wonderful thing to discover, along with the understanding that when you learn to from time to time, to turn your attention to the inner being, instead of losing yourself constantly in other people and circumstances or box sets on TV, or the various stimuli that this very commercially minded world offers. When you learn to free yourself from those pulls and charge the battery through inner awareness and spiritual study, then the sense of freedom that grows ripples out into your life and brings good consequences from almost every angle. It's wonderful that more and more people are learning this. I think especially the COVID crisis made people realize how vulnerable they were to crazy things that the scientists might get up to the exploitation that politicians could do when they go wrong. And people are learning more and more that for a better future, we must empower ourselves individually and internally. The other thing that comes with this this return to love as your base, rather than looking for love or longing for love, is the other thing is that you can see things more clearly. When you're driven by neediness, it colors the way you see things. It's well known among con men, for example, that con men always look for something that the victim of their con is something that they deeply want. It might be approval, it might be money, it might be an easy life, and they spot that, and then they kind of offer the dream, which then later the person finds that it was all a scam. So the more and the whole world is full of people making money out of our neediness. So the more you reduce that neediness internally, the more you can see clearly where the traps lie and avoid them. And that too is a beautiful contribution to one's life for remaining stronger. So yeah, it's so simple really, but on the other hand, I've been doing it for many years and the job continues. Still sometimes with the journalistic efforts I'm doing, I try to do it with a complete spirit of giving, just that this is something that I'm equipped to write about or study and share. Still, there's something of that feeling of frustration when nobody wants to listen or when people don't understand. But more and more, I'm moving towards that space where just do what I can and feel as if I've got this spirit of givingness with me. But a key to that is I haven't really mentioned it much. I did say at the outset that I'd gone from being an atheist to something with a much deeper sense of there being a divine purpose behind all of this. And just finally to say a word on that it's difficult to define God. So many people have the feeling inside, just culturally we say, oh God, when we're in trouble or whatever. And through the centuries, people have taken inspiration from great religious leaders who would say, if you live in this way, you can feel closer to God. All of that has been there, but still in the understanding that I have, there's been a tendency for power to be lost. And I think it's because we didn't really know quite how fundamental uh, consciousness is to the world we live in. God is like a seed of pure consciousness, absolutely pure consciousness. And in science now, there's a whole new paradigm emerging that they call post-materialist science, which says that consciousness is primary in our lives. Consciousness creates the material world. This is actually quite semi-orthodox physics. Physics now is understanding that you don't get matter without information. But where does that information come from? It comes from what traditionally would be called the divine, a kind of sense of an area of understanding, almost like a matrix of information held by consciousness. And there is within that a supreme being who is like the seed of the highest consciousness. And the meditation that I've learned about enables me to connect to that seed. And that too is part of what really empowers one for more and more feeling that you've got that one with you in your life. And if you can act in ways that don't alienate you from that sense of connection to the divine, then your actions become more positive and much less liable to get you into trouble. So that's the essence of the story.
Wonderful. So, yeah, uh, I got some interesting phrases in your sharing today. One thing that you said, falling in love versus rising in love. Uh, you know how out in the world sometimes when there's a difference of opinion between two people, there's a tendency to blame the other person a lot, and it takes a lot of time before they can realize that things are okay and for a reason. You did touch upon the equation where you said thoughts lead to experience. So if the effect is not right or not what I want, I should go back to checking what my thoughts are. In circumstances like these, game into saying, okay, things are not bad or things will be okay. So how do we make that shift? Any thoughts on that?
I lost you there for a minute, Lata. You froze. Can you just repeat your question?
Sure. So when people are going through this difficult situation in their life and maybe, have that thought of blaming someone, how can they make that shift within? What thought process should they uh, adapt to say, okay, it's not someone else's fault, or I need not blame them, but it's something for me to change within myself.
A really nice principle on this is that it's better to be kind than to be right. This helps a lot. Um, okay, sometimes, you know what's right, you feel you know what's right, but you have to acknowledge that others are going to see things differently. But definitely as an immediate response, rather than to have an emotional reaction to something that you feel is not right, it's so much better to keep your emotions positive and keep that kindness there. That is a wonderful principle. I'm not saying I can manage it all the time, but again, I'm much better at it because of knowing how to keep the sort of inner battery better charged, so that whereas when we are feeling depleted because of a lack of understanding of how to connect to that inner realm, then the ego, the sort of sense of self that is limited to the brain and your position and your kind of role in the external world, that fights to be right because it feels that it has to defend itself. When you can make a bit of a separation between the ego self, which isn't always wrong, it's a structure that you live with as a human being, but when you make a separation between that and the inner being that you want to restore to its full power, and the power in the inner being is essentially kindness. I remember once one of the teachers of the spiritual university that I practiced with for so long, they said remembrance means kindness. There's this idea that we all need to remember the supreme being, that wonderful unalloyed source of beauty and truth, and remember our own original natures as having come from that one. Um, Remembrance means kindness. It was defined as that. So definitely better to be kind than to be right, as a first instance. And then I noticed that some of the really practiced yogis, they would adopt this. They would kind of, if they could see that you were not ready to listen to their perspective, they would say, okay, they'd go along with you. But then subsequently, when they saw that, you were less entrenched in wanting to be right, they would correct you. So this is a good principle for improving relationships. I love a story that I remember from when I used to watch a Japanese program with my sons called The Water Margin. And it was set in ancient Japan with samurai warriors and all sorts of daring do's. And at the end of each episode, there was a little homily, like you could learn from what had happened. And one of them, it said, the commentator said, when evil is fought with evil, only evil can win. And this is so true, that what's the point of getting upset about someone being wrong? By being upset, you're just adding to the problem. So, it's a good principle to try to hold on to kindness, but difficult unless you have learned how to reconnect with that inner being.
Wonderful, wonderful. So I think that's such a good like formula to remember, that if I'm feeling something different, I check what's my kindness percentage, and if I can shift that within and be more loving and kind.
Mm.
And as you rightly said, kindness is remembrance or remembrance is kindness.
Mm.
And you've been a meditator for such a long time. So I think our viewers would really enjoy getting a little glimpse of that experience, or a little meditation experience. If you could speak a commentary and lead us into that journey for a little few minutes, if that's okay.
At the core of the meditation that I found so valuable, there lies this shift of sense of who you are, from the roles that you play and the body and even the brain and all the conditioning that's gone on inside it, to the eternal being, the soul. That this individuated unit of consciousness, as the scientists might put it, those that are working with this new paradigm of the consciousness-based paradigm. So first of all, I come into that awareness that I'm not my brain. I'm not my thoughts. I might be using my thoughts and my body to take me into this inner awareness, but the inner awareness is of stillness and kindness and peace and a kind of joy that doesn't depend on the senses, just an intrinsic quality of being that is there when I'm connected with my inner truth. So that's the first step. And then when I'm on that wavelength, so to speak, of my inner beauty, it's like a resonance with the supreme source of this spiritual truth, who I think is what people have referred to as God over the centuries, although there have been so many misunderstandings and weird ideas and doing horrible things in the name of God that the word troubles me. But there is a supreme being, and it's when I move my awareness into that state of truth that is free of Neville, in a sense, that I feel as if I'm connected to that one. There's a sort of download into my being as an individual. And the love that I feel when I'm in that condition, and the peace and the happiness, they're all aspects that when I finish meditating, they empower me to be approaching life from that loving perspective rather than the needing perspective, making that big shift inside. And there's one other aspect to mention, which is that in the spiritual understanding that I've gained, every soul is eternal. Through our journeys through time, we gradually lose sight of this inner truth. We start out in a state of perfection, but through just some kind of natural entropy, gradually we get lost in other people and the body and the material world and forget about this deeper dimension. And it's quite fun at first when we become very engaged with the world of matter, but we really need to find space to reconnect with the inner being as well. So this understanding that I've been on a journey, truth is my original condition, but there's other stuff mixed now. So not to expect myself to be perfect overnight, just because I might have had a glimpse of some beautiful truth inside. It's a journey to gradually recover that beauty and truth that lies at the heart of all of us, but which in today's world is quite deeply hidden. This understanding is also very valuable in allowing you to embark on the journey of renewal.
Thank you very much, Neville, uh, for that sharing and your wisdom that we sure you've gained over all these years of practice and putting it into your life. So it's been wonderful to have you on this uh, program, and I'm sure our viewers will surely benefit from your sharing today. So,
Thank you, Nata, and nice to be with you. I was over in Australia recently, and I had a wonderful time seeing the brilliant work that's going on through the Brahma Kumaris Spiritual University there. Absolutely terrific. So it was a great pleasure, and I live in Oxford, back in England, at a retreat centre myself, and so perhaps at some point some of you will be coming over here to see us
yes,
at our retreat centres too.
why not? Definitely.
It's a long way though.
Uh,
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you to our viewers for joining as well. And if you would like to know more about us, please do visit our website www.brahmakumaris.org.au. And of course, the Brahma Kumaris centers are there worldwide. You're welcome to go to Australia or the UK or Oxford. So, thank you very much, and we will be back with another interesting episode.
Thank you.